Hey YouTube, it's your girl Dr. J, and I am back with a video about the next feast day that me and my family will be celebrating here soon, and that is Yom Kippur. Now, the one thing that is so wonderful about this holiday or feast day for us, and not just about this feast day but all the feast days, is that you will find so much diversity in how the feasts are thought about, talked about, how, the different customs that people have in their homes around the feast. So just like all the other disclaimers, I'm just talking about what me and my family does and some of the understanding that I have from a lot of the study that, my family and I have done on this journey. So what we have coming up is Yom Kippur. And one of the things that's fascinating about this day is how people will celebrate this day is really dependent upon their perspective and the interpretation and translation that they have of the word Kippurym or Kippurym. And Kippurym, y'all know I'm dyslexic, so I got to get it right. Kippurym is spelled Kippurym, so that you can kind of look it up for yourself. And this day is often, the word is often translated as the Day of Atonement, but Kippurym can be translated as dread. It can be translated as atonement. It can be translated as reconciliation. And so depending on the way that people translate the term, that is going to be really the perspective that they come from in their honoring of this particular day. So a lot of times if you have people who, they may be Orthodox Jews, and sometimes some Messianics, and different ways that people approach it, Yom Kippur will be celebrated like with fasting, because it is about, atonement and atoning for people's shortcomings and the things that they have done that don't necessarily align with Torah. Whereas for us, the way we look at Kippurym, it is really about the translation of the word reconciliations. And it is a day for us to wait in anticipation to be reconciled with Yahuwah through the work of, Yahushua, the Messiah. So that's the way that we look at the day. Another thing that's really fascinating and sometimes frustrating and some really confusing for a lot of people when it comes to the feast days is that depending on the calendar that you use, the day in which you'll celebrate a lot of the feast is going to be different. So I'm going to give you guys some of the different days. So for 2013, if you are following the astronomical calendar, you will be celebrating Kippurym on Saturday, September the 14th. The people that celebrate, that follow the observational calendar will be Monday, September the 16th. The Hebrew.com calendar is going to be, Kippurym will be on Friday, September the 13th. For the paleotimes.org calendar is Sunday, September the 15th. And the Karaite calendar has Kippurym on Tuesday, September the 17th, but really it's going to be, you would start that feast day like the day before, sundown the day before. And so people go, how come y'all don't even know what day y'all are supposed to be celebrating on? Well, there's a reason for that, and that is that like people who like the Karaite calendar, the way the Karaite calendar is determined is that that calendar tries to be as closely aligned as we can possibly be in the way that Yahuwah told Moses to determine the feast days. And so the feast days are determined most times by when specific things are observed in Jerusalem. Now, the way that we got the astronomical calendar was because when the Jews were exiled into Babylonian captivity, they could no longer determine the feast days by observing what was taking place. Could they cite the new moon in Jerusalem? Was the Barley Aviv in Jerusalem? So they could not do those things. And so they had to come up with calculations and did a fascinating job. I mean, a fascinating job, because the feast days will be off or will not be correlated just by a couple days or so. And to think that, these calculations have been around for as long as they've been around, and people's math was that awesome is great. But, some people said, okay, well, when the Jews were allowed back into Jerusalem, and we can now absolutely tell when feast days were back to the way that Yahweh asked Moses to do it, that's what some people do. So that's going to be those particular calendars. So that's one thing about the feast. One person may be celebrating today, somebody else tomorrow. It's just going to depend. And that's why for us and for my household, translation is so important. I know that one of the questions that was asked on another of my videos when I was talking about Hebrew resources, somebody had asked the question and said, well, why are you teaching your kids to learn like this, Hebrew just for a spiritual aspect of it? And, they were saying that, they had looked at Hebrew and they couldn't get a job in Israel, or something like that. And it is because for us, because we are Torah observant, but we do not belong to any religion. So we have zero religious affiliation. We just look at the Torah. And for us, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Now, those books have different names. We look at the Hebrew names. So sometimes those names are very similar. So that Genesis and Bereshith, they both pretty much mean in the beginning. But other names of books are just completely different, like Exodus, but for us, because we said that our lives are going to be guided by the Torah, it is really important for us to know for ourselves what the Torah says. So we do not rely on anyone's particular translation. And so it's really, really hard. I mean, translating is really hard. It's really time consuming. It's a lot of work. Now, anybody who has done their own translations, that, Hebrew, it has a lot of words with dual meanings, just like I talked about, Kippurym in the beginning. Okay, is it atonement? Is it reconciliation? Is it dread? Is it, and, as you're going through that process, it can be hard. Now, the reason why I need to learn, or my kids need to know, the earliest aspects of Hebrew is because those are the documents that we're dealing with. Just like if I was trying to read documents from the English documents from the 1500s, it doesn't make sense for me to go out and get a textbook that they're using in Kentucky in 2013. Why? Because the English language has changed so much over time. For instance, in the 1500s, the letter J hadn't even been invented yet. So it's going to be like those sort of things. Like the letter J wasn't invented into the mid 1500s, and it wasn't into a lot of use into the mid 1600s. So if I'm using a textbooks from Kentucky and it's all through there, and then I'm going, oh, okay, that word, that's not the right word. Well, it is the right word for the 1500s. That's the reason why we need to know that aspect of Hebrew. If I want my kids to learn a language for, benefit, like business benefit and that sort of stuff, that's the reason why my kids are learning Mandarin Chinese right now, because that's the most practical language to learn. Most people in the world speak some version of Chinese. Mandarin Chinese is the most easily understood and easily read by a third of the world's population. So that's what my kids are learning. Doesn't make sense for us to spend this much time and energy to learn modern Hebrew when it wouldn't really help us that well. What we need is the earliest aspects of Hebrew. For instance, if you are learning modern Hebrew, you'll learn the vowel pointing system. The vowel pointing system was not in existence, 4,000 years ago when Moses was getting the Torah, or 2,000 years ago when like the Qumran scrolls were written. So, it's not beneficial. Another thing that is really guides the way people practice the feast, or people observe the feast, is that words, depending on your translation and your guiding principles, words mean very different things. We try as much as possible to have the original intent and meaning of the word, and that can be seen just in the use of the word Torah. Okay, when I tell people we are Torah observant, sometimes people don't necessarily understand that, because we don't all agree on what the word Torah means. Like for a lot of people, the word Torah means law. If you look at any of your English language Christian Bibles, And you guys know I have tons and tons and tons of Christian Bibles. Use them as resources to look through all the time. And every time you would have seen the word Torah, it is translated as law. But the word Torah doesn't mean law. The word Torah means instructions. So, sometimes laws are just, laws are kind of because I said so, whereas instructions, they have meaning and purpose behind them. So like we don't consider them dietary laws. We consider them dietary instructions. So we have to go and we have to sit back and say, okay, why is that instruction there? What was Yehovah trying to say? What was he trying to get us to understand? That's what being Torah observant is about for us. And that's why what we do is oftentimes very different. And that's how it comes to with the feast. For instance, you will see some people when they celebrate the feast, they have specific things that they do, like they have specific prayers that they will do and other type of customs and rituals and different things like that, where you won't necessarily find those things in our home. In our home, we try to be as closely aligned to what was given to Moses as possible. And so, for instance, there are particular instructions for the type of meal that you should have for Passover. Now, me and my family, we really can't go out and get a lamb and bring it into our house for so many days and then slaughter it in a particular way and, eat it. But we do make sure that for our Passover meal, we have lamb and unleavened bread and bitter herbs and all those things that were present at the meal. And what we try to do is understand, shamar, which means, to observe, understand, get to know why. That's what we do. Why are we having lamb? Why are we having bitter herbs? Why are we having unleavened bread? So that's really how we go and observe the feast. Now for Yom Kippur, there are not a particular set of dietary instructions that go with the type of meal. You will find a lot of people who are like Orthodox Jews and even some Karaites, some Israelites. They will actually fast for Yom Kippur because of the way that their interpretation is that this is about atonement. Whereas for us, that's, our translation, it's not like that. And so that's, not what we do. And so that's one of the kind of the most fascinating things about being Torah observant, is that everybody is going to do it in kind of a different way, and everybody's going to have a meaning that's a little bit different, and that's why it's you can have two people standing side by side and they both say that they're Torah observant, and one person will be wearing tzitzit and one person won't. One person will, do Shabbat a particular way or Sabbath a particular way, and other people won't. And so it's really about, for us, we didn't want to be guided by any religion. We didn't want to be guided by any particular person. We wanted to figure things out for ourselves. It's like, if this is what we're going to be judged on and accounted for, and if this is what our eternity is going to depend on, for us, we said we wanted to rise, fall, whatever, based on a specific decision that we made. We believe that, it's like, if my eternity depends on this, I don't want to be, doing something because somebody else told me to do it. And so that's for us why translation is so important. And all the feast days for us are really positive and really come from a happy perspective. So that's something that's a little bit different. Like Passover for us, it's a joyous time, it's a happy time, as is 7/7s or Shabuah and unleavened bread. I mean, even though I will admit that unleavened bread is a hard one, because I'm a bread girl, and so is a lot of my family. So leaven is everything, you guys. But for us, the feast days are really a lot of fun, and Yom Kippur is no different. It is a great day for us. It's all about reconciliation, so we wait in anticipation to be reconciled. And that, it is mind-blowing. The feast days are there's so much fun in our home, and a lot of that comes from the fun we have in just getting more understanding as we go on this journey. So I hope this has been helpful or informative to people. If you guys have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments box below. And remember, this is just the way we do it in Dr. J's house. You're going to find other people that's going to do it different, and that's all right. It's all about diversity, right, y'all? So hope this helps. This is Dr. J, and I'm out. Bye-bye.